Hey guys, I'm Lindsay with Off the Beaten Hook, and in this video tutorial I am going to help you make your way through the Cory the Caterpillar crochet pattern. A lot of the pattern is super easy, even for beginners. There's a lot of repetition, so I do not cover the entire making of the caterpillar in this video tutorial. So go grab the pattern first. You can find the free version on my blog, or if you want the printable copy, you can find that on Etsy or Ravelry. I will link to all of those places in the description box below. I will also link to the materials that I use if you want to make it exactly the same as mine. So go grab your yarn and your hooks and the pattern and let's dive in. Well, hello there. Hey, I am going to do one of these donuts with you to give you what you're going to need to understand all of the techniques you'll be using to make the donuts for this caterpillar. I am going to do the square with you. That's the only one I'm going to do fully with you, because with the exception of the star, they are all done in continuous rounds where you begin with a chain of 24, you're increasing, you're doing 4 rows of just single crochet to give it some width, and then you're decreasing down the other side and then stuffing it. I chose the square because there are some techniques for the corners that you'll want to watch to make it super easy for you to do all the increases and the decreases without having to count. And I think after you do that one with me, you will feel comfortable doing all of the others, as you'll have an idea of how the increases build on each other, how the decreases build on each other to create these little cute donuts. All right, so for this caterpillar, I am using a 3mm hook and DK weight yarn. I'm using yarn from my stash, so not all of the types of yarn that I used for all of these different colors were from the same brand. In the pattern, I do recommend using Paint Box Yarns Cotton DK if you want to keep it consistent, or if you don't have all the colors you need already in your stash. This is a Paint Box DK. I think it's the daffodil yellow that I happen to have for the yellow. So again, we are doing the square together, and I'm going to get you going on that right now. All right, so we are going to begin this shape and all the other shapes by chaining 24. You're going to slip knot onto your hook, and you also will need, sorry, I should mention, 4 stitch markers to mark the corners, and 1 stitch marker to mark the beginning of your row. So you'll need 5 altogether. And there we go. All right, so we're off and chaining 24 to begin our square. 24. All right, so making sure your chain isn't twisted, you're going to bring it around, and we're going to close this into a circle. And we're going to be working in the back bumps, so I'm going to close this with a slip stitch to that very first back bump of the first chain that I made. Okay, so I'm going to pull over and slip stitch. Now your first stitch will also be in that same back bump, because that does count as a stitch. Okay, so this does count as round 1. So for round 2, we're going to jump in and begin making our square shape with our 4 corners. So we are going to single crochet 1 single crochet in the first 5 back bumps. So again, in that same back bump where you just slip stitch, you're going to make your first single crochet. Go ahead and mark that. You would definitely need to be marking these stitches that I'm telling you to mark, because this is part of the method of how to make all of these corners without having to count every time you go around. All right, so that was 1. Okay, and then in the next 4 back bumps, so you will end with 5 single crochet for this first little section. Okay, 3, 4, 5. Right, now in this next chain is going to be our very first corner. So we're going to place 3 single crochet in this next chain. We are going to mark the middle one of those 3 with one of our stitch markers. Okay, so we just made 3 single crochet into that one stitch. I'm going to take a stitch marker and I'm going to mark the very middle one that we made of that 3. So the second one that you made. Okay, that marks where you're going to do that again the next time you come around. Now I'm going to repeat those 5 single crochet and then the 1 single crochet increase. I'm going to do that 3 times more. So we're going to do 5 single crochet. Again, this is the second side of the square. Working in the back bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, making it over to our second corner here. We're going to make our second corner with 3 single crochet all in this 1 chain. 1, 2, 3. Take another stitch marker and mark that middle stitch of that 3 single crochet increase you just did. And that is your second corner. All right, 5 single crochet. Sometimes that next back bump gets a little tight after you've done 3 into the previous bump, so don't worry, it'll get a lot easier once you're done working through these chains. 3, 4, 5. Okay, back to another corner here. So 3 single crochet in this next bump. 1, 2, 3. Take another stitch marker, mark that middle stitch for our third corner there. Final side, I'm going to do 5 single crochet, making our way over to the last corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in our final chain here in the back bump, we're going to make 3 single crochet in that same chain. 1, 2, 3. Grab your final stitch marker here and mark the middle stitch of those 3 that you just made. Okay, so there you have it. You have made it to the end of round 2 of the square, and you can clearly see the shape coming together. I'm going to do the second round with you, or this will be the third round. I'm going to do it with you just to show you how it'll start to build on itself. Okay, so we're taking out this stitch marker and starting round 3. So I'm going to place my first single crochet of round 3. I am going to replace this. And the reason why you want to keep replacing that first stitch is you'll see as you continue to make your increases in this final corner, it's not always going to be that next stitch because you're adding stitches on this corner. And towards the end, in fact, I have another one going here, I will show you. As you go along, you'll see this, the first stitch of the round, it doesn't just always stay there in the corner. It migrates as you increase and decrease to create this shape. All right, so I just replaced my stitch marker there. I'm going to place a single crochet all the way over until I get to this stitch marker. See how I'm not having to count in between stitch markers? I'm just letting the stitch markers do all the hard work for me. Okay, so I have arrived at my stitch marker. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to place 3 single crochet into that stitch, building on my first corner. 1, 2, 3. I am taking my stitch marker up again and I'm going to put it into that center stitch just like I did the last round, right? Single crocheting across to the next corner. All right, I've arrived at my second corner, taking my stitch marker out, 3 single crochet into that corner, 1, 2, 3, bringing my stitch marker back into that middle of those 3 stitches. Again, remember you're not marking the last stitch of those 3, you're marking the middle stitch of those 3. It's where your corner will continue to build. single crochet across to my next corner or my next stitch marker. Again, take that stitch marker out, 3 single crochet into that corner. 1, 2, 3. Marking that middle stitch of those 3. 1 single crochet in each of these stitches across this last side of the square to the 4th corner. All right, I've arrived at the 4th corner, placing 3 stitches where that stitch marker was. 1, 2, 3, putting that stitch marker back in to which one? The middle one. All right, and now we've got 1 more stitch until we reach the end of the round again because of that 3 stitch increase on the previous round. And here we are back at the beginning of the next round. All right, so here is the end of round 3. So you're just going to continue to see that square build and build and build and get wider. You're going to do that same round, going around and placing your increases where the stitch markers are. You're going to do that through round 7. After round 7, you'll have 72 stitches, and then you are simply going to make 4 rounds of single crochet all the way around, and then you're going to decrease to make it down the other side of the square. And I will show you how to do that when we get there. All right, so I've just completed round 4 through 7, where I'm going up and I am making my increases, my 3 single crochet increases in each of the corners. So for rows 8 through 11, I am simply going to single crochet all the way around for 4 continuous rows. And as you come around to each of these stitch markers, you're going to remove the stitch marker, make your stitch in that place, and then replace the stitch marker as well. So after these rounds, you still want to keep all of these stitch markers in, because those are going to mark where you're going to do your decreases as you bring your square back down the other side so that you can seam the middle of it together. All right, so I have just finished my round 11 of the square, and this is what it looks like. So I have made my way around with 4 rows of just single crochet continuous rounds, taking out my stitch markers and replacing them immediately after making the stitch there so that I could remember where I need to make my decreases in the next several rounds, which is what I'm going to show you now. All right, so pick up right where you left off. And what you're going to do is you'll find that you're going to be placing your decreases right where you placed your increases. And when you made your increases, you made 3 single crochet into each of the corners. And as you decrease, you're going to decrease 3 stitches. So rather than just your typical 2-stitch decrease, just take note that it is 3 stitches. So you're going to use the stitch immediately prior to where your stitch marker is, and then the stitch where your stitch marker is, and then the stitch immediately after where your stitch marker is. So those are the 3 that you're going to use to create 1 decrease stitch, and I will show you how to do that. And then you will just simply single crochet across the next side of the square, do the same thing with these 3 stitches in the corner, on and on with all 4 corners. So I'm picking up at the beginning of my row. So this is going to be round 12. I am going to single crochet across, again stopping right at the prior to this stitch right here in front of the stitch marker. So I'll go all the way across to this guy right here, and then not make anything in here, and then we'll do the single crochet together. So that's what I'm going to do now. Again, you do want to replace your first stitch marker there to mark the beginning of your row. And then 1 single crochet in each of these stitches across to the first corner. All right, this is my last single crochet. So again, I'm stopping prior to this one that's right in front of the stitch marker. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take that stitch marker out, and I'm going to do a single crochet decrease over these 3 stitches. So I'm single crochet 3 together. Immediately into this next one, immediately into this next one. So we've got all 3 of those stitches that we are bringing into 1 stitch. Okay, before I am going to place my stitch marker back into that one. I usually try to kind of close it, or whatever you want to call it, by making 1 more stitch so you can see how that looks. So go ahead and mark where you just did your decrease there. Again, I did 1 additional stitch afterwards, so I'm not marking that one. And that is your first decrease. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place 1 single crochet in each of these stitches across to this corner, stopping prior to this one right in front of the stitch marker, and then we'll decrease those 3 together. All right, here I am making my last single crochet along that side of the square. I've made it to my 3 stitches here that mark the corner. So I'm going to remove that stitch marker. I'm going to single crochet these 3 stitches together. Okay, again, I'm going to mark that stitch. I'm going to complete that. It just kind of makes it cleaner for me to mark that stitch. And there you have your second corner. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that again for this corner and across to this corner and all the way back to the row, the end of the row over here. You can see it very clearly taking shape into the square. You're simply going to repeat round 12 again when you're doing rounds 13 through 17 as you go around and decrease at the corners. And then you're going to end up with 24 stitches after round 17, and you will hold them together and seam this closed. So this whole side will come down and you're going to hold those, you're going to pinch it closed, and you'll seam that into a donut shape. I think you can handle that without me showing you how to do that. And so when you finish your square, it will look something like this, minus the little feet at that point. I already put the feet on this one. All right, so now that you are comfortable with how to do those corners with the stitch markers, I will just show you when you come to your little triangle and your heart, where you see these pointy corners, those are done in the same way as these corners are done on the square. So by the time you get to those, you should be very comfortable with how that works, and also with the decreases going down the other side. All right, the heart obviously has several increases going to shape this part, but it's all the same idea. Wherever you're doing an increase, you ultimately make your decreases on the opposite side in that exact same place, so that we keep the shape on the same on the front and the back. So the only exception to this method is with the star. The star is actually created in 2 pieces and then seamed together around the outside. You can see the seam, and then stuffed from the middle and seamed together in the middle, just like the rest of them. We do it that way because it's so much easier to do these points in turning rows around a chain rather than trying to do this. Believe me, I tried. It was just way easier to do it this way. So with the star, you will end up with your beginning chain, which is actually 25 rather than 24 like all of your other shapes, just to make sure we had an equal number for all of the 5 points. So you'll still start with that chain, but then rather than doing continuous rounds to increase it, you're going to be doing little short rows and then slip stitching down, doing another little short row, slip stitching down. You should be able to follow the pattern on that one pretty easy, and then you just seam that together and stuff it like the rest. All right, now one note about finishing up each of your little donuts, because I didn't feel like you needed to watch me boring stuff a donut just to show you how to close it off. But I did want to mention, in case you missed the note in the written pattern, that I recommend stuffing every 4 to 6 stitches. So it'll go pretty quick. You're gonna, when you're seaming these together with your long tail that you're gonna leave, and you're just gonna going back and forth in your whip stitching these closed, they come together so quickly because there's only 24 stitches. So don't forget to stop every 4 to 6 stitches to really get your fingers in there and push the stuffing into the corners. You're going to deal with that with these guys in particular. And really get your stuffing in there. Don't be afraid to really shape it and push it and jam it in there to get the nice distinct shape. And you're going to need to do that only every few stitches. If you try to do like a third of it or a half of it, you just won't be able to get into these small little areas very easily. So take my word for it and stuff it every 4 stitches or so. All right, as you're putting your face and your head of this cute little caterpillar together, I just want to kind of give you a visual. Lots of pictures in the written pattern as well. But once you create your little whites of the eyes, one note that I wanted to make is when you insert your safety eyes, you're not going to insert them into the very center of the magic circle like you normally would. You're actually going to insert them between rounds 1 and 2, so they're offset just a little bit so you have more whites. If you like it better in the center, obviously go for it. But if you're wanting it to look like these, you are going to insert them in between rounds 1 and 2 and kind of angle them inward a little bit when you sew them onto the face. And then you will just line them up. Basically, you've got your magic circle here on your head, and then you've got your magic circles here and here on the whites of the eyes. And I basically just line all of those up together, and that's where I sew them on. So I pop my safety eyes all the way through the head and close them off, and then I took the end of the white, I left a little yarn tail, and then I sewed in and out just to secure this white part on without it being flappy. Then what you will do is you will take a thread of embroidery thread or just the black yarn. I just used the black yarn for this little guy's mouth. And it is going to be obviously centered underneath this magic circle. And I have this going in between rounds 4 and 5. So right here is row 4, this is row 5. So the ends of the little mouth are going between rounds 4 and 5. And then I'm just carrying it down 1 row to the middle and right back up to make the cute little mouth. Okay, and then finally the antennae are sewn on to the top of the head. Of course, center them over the eyes, and they are sewn on over round 11. Again, counting from the magic circle and counting up. This is round 11. And I have them spaced between each other by 6 stitches over the top of the head here. That's how I placed it. Take your artistic liberty and place those little guys wherever you want, but that is how I made the sample. And then on the back of the head, you've got your hole, your little divot where it pops on to the end of the pole, where before you close it off, you're going to stuff it, and you're going to kind of push the stuffing out to the ends and the sides and shape the head and leave a big hole right there so you can close that off, and ultimately it will just kind of press onto the end of the pole like this and act as a cute little cap holding on the different sections of the body, the shapes. Let's look at how to insert this dowel into the pole. Now I use just a standard sized pencil, ends up being exactly the right length for this pole, and it is nice and sturdy. You are going to, after stuffing the bum and creating all the little layers of the pole, just create a hole down into the stuffing in that bum. You're going to kind of bore a hole as you push that dowel down into the bum. Now you want the dowel to end up being about halfway down the bum. So in this purple section here, that's kind of where one tip is, and then it's going to end up to this other section, which will ultimately be where the end of your red ends. Now I do this after I do the orange, and it creates, just makes it a little bit easier, right? So let's take a look at how I'm going to stuff this. So I'm taking little bits of stuffing. You want to try to keep that dowel or the pencil centered in the pole. So I'm just doing little bits of stuffing. I'm using this stick that comes with the box of stuffing, and I am pushing it in little bits equally and evenly all around this dowel. I'm going to continue doing this and pushing it nice and firm and stiff all the way until it makes it to the top of this orange section. Now, when I reach to the top of this orange section and finished stuffing, I'm going to continue on with the red part of the pole, the part that the head is going to attach onto, and stuff it and close it, and your caterpillar will be complete.